Hey, it's Todd Duncan. Welcome to Where Success Happens. And thank you so much for viewing or listening to our podcast. We obviously count on people like you to help us continue to keep the message out there that there is a better way to live. There's a better way to do business. There is a better way, period. Everything can be improved, and that's a great principle to understand. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. Hit that subscribe button and smash it hard. Obviously, if you're a leader, share this with anybody. If you are a salesperson, share it with anybody. If you just find the message valuable, share it with the people that you care most about. And thank you again for being part of the podcast. So the title of this podcast is What's Your Story? And it's a very important question to be able to really get your head around, right? And there's two reasons why what's your story is important. First is your story. And one of the things that's important is that we all as individuals have clarity on the idea that our story is always in development. I did a program years ago called an Annual Review with You. And it was a year-end program where each year you'd sit down and you'd kind of have a deep dive, a reflective deep dive towards the end of the year on your story. How did it go this year? What were your highlights? What were your most memorable moments? What were the greatest difficulties you got through? What were some of the visions and ideas that you had for the year or two that were coming? In other words, you're continuing to write the screenplay of your story each and every day. And each and every moment of every day, your story is being developed. And so I always try to encourage people to understand that you're the architect of your story. You are the screenwriter of your story. And whether or not you really get that or not, that is the value of a life well lived. Crafting your story, working on your story, and writing your story as to what you want to be able to look back on at some point and reflect on, right? It can be in your 80s, it could be in your 90s, it could be the decisions you make when you're 30 to live well when you're 50. It can be any of those things, right? And so storytelling, what's your story, really important. But you don't want to lead with your story. You actually want to lead with the customer story. One of the great analogies that I can set up for you is if you take a look at the most recent episode of American Idol, you've got your judges, you got Katy Perry and you got Luke Bryan and you got the master Lionel Richie, and you've got this beautifully young woman that is trying out for American Idol, and you can all of a sudden see this kind of transition where American Idol, and it's always been part of how they executive produce episodes. There's always like backstories, right? Backstories of what's your story. And they always ask somebody, particularly because they know, how it might end up, tell us your story. And they did this with this most recent gal. Her name was Ronda Felton. And all Lionel did was follow Katy Perry and say, so tell us about you. What is your story? And she couldn't get a word out. She started crying immediately. And when kind of pressed a little bit with a simple question, what's behind those tears? She talked of hardship. And if you watch the episode, if you see some of the embedded clips that we have in the podcast, you can just see the emotion of here's somebody that has a dream. Here's somebody whose story is only 19 years old. And here's somebody who wants to go to a level that would change everything. So what does that mean? Well, it means that forget that it's Lionel Richie and forget that it's Ronda Felton. What you have to get is the power of the question. When you're talking with clients, when you're talking with prospects, when you meet somebody for the first time, the most important question you can ask early on is this question. So what's your story? Or, so tell me your story. And the story can be a minute. It can be 2 minutes. It can be 3 minutes. But what it does is two things. It allows for you to connect. When you know somebody's story and you can feel the emotion behind that story, then you can identify with the person in unique and different ways. If you go to toddduncan.com and you click on my story, you'll be able to see my story. And if you don't know who I am, when you read that, you will know at the end who I am. So part of what we try to do in creating trust and reducing tension is we try to connect with people. And what Lionel Richie did with Ronda Felton was connection. And the rest of the story is still in development, right? And the rest of my story, your story, the story of a client, it's in development. I remember interviewing a loan originator a couple of years ago, and we were talking about connection, client connection. And what I always tell people is ask questions you haven't asked. Okay. Learn things you've never learned so that you can solve things you've never solved. And I think most of the people that are hearing this don't really know deeply, and I mean it deeply, the true story, the why behind the story, the why I'm here in the first place. And I think the reason why they miss it is they don't ask the question. When you know somebody's real purpose, like Lionel Richie now knows Ronda Felton's purpose. He knows what she wants to have happen, and he knows why she wants it to happen. So I was talking with this loan originator, and he had asked this realtor a question about what was important to her in the years to come and what she would like her story to look like. And part of what she told about making enough money so she could build a cabin for her husband on a lake that he loved, so that if she predeceased him, he would be taken care of. That was a huge moment in a conversation when that discussion took place, because now what this loan originator knew he needed to do was continue to help this realtor improve her business, improve her cash flow. And every time they picked up a conversation, whether it was a couple weeks in between or a month, he could always go, so how's that fund coming for your husband and the lake house? And immediately upon saying that, there's a connection, right? And connection is influence. Connection is loyalty. Connection is collaboration. There's so many things that go on when you figure out what somebody's story is. So try this out. Here's your assignment. In the next 48 hours, ask 5 people to tell you their story. Just do it. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter whom. Just ask the question. So tell me your story. I'm going to be arriving at a location tomorrow night, and I'm going to be in a group of about 100 people. And all I'm going to do is tell me your story. Tell me your story. Tell me your story. As soon as you know somebody's story, you know how to impact their life.